Good morning or good afternoon. Welcome to today's eFolder Partner Chat webinar. This is Ted Hulsy, Vice President of Marketing with eFolder. The topic for today's webinar is the eFolder BDR Cost Wizard and 3 secrets to pricing and packaging your BDR service. Before we get into the bulk of the content, let's go over a couple housekeeping items. Everybody who's joining us today is in listen-only mode. If you have questions, we'll be answering them as we go along, but we will have a dedicated Q&A section at the end of today's webinar. A recording of today's webinar will be posted to the eFolder YouTube channel by tomorrow, and we will be sending out copies of the slides to everybody who attended today's event. So let's get into the bulk of the content here and talk about first really what we're really going to focus on today, and it's all about the revenue and profit opportunity that eFolder partners have in supplying backup and disaster recovery and business continuity services to your clients. Imagine for a moment, if you will, this is your revenue opportunity. It's a recurring revenue business opportunity, and what you need to keep in mind is that the whole opportunity with business continuity services for your clients is it really has the opportunity of being the most profitable service offering you deliver to your clients. I'm going to go into pretty great depth in about 10 or 15 minutes here with how 3 different eFolder partners are taking their BDR services to market. And I'm going to share with you 3 different pricing models that those partners use and give you kind of the pluses and minuses of each approach, and then let you really decide which is the right one for your business. But before we do that, the thing I want to kind of focus on at the beginning of the webinar is really helping you to better understand what your wholesale costs are going to be. What we're seeing in our partner base today is that best-in-class margins are really in the 70 to 75% range for most partners. That's really the huge promise of business continuity services, is it can be extremely high margin on a monthly recurring basis. What you need to, of course, factor in is if you're working with a vendor like eFolder, there are software, cloud services, and hardware costs that, of course, need to be factored into the overall equation. And what a lot of our partners are seeing is when they're deploying eFolder BDR services, those costs often make up roughly 30% of the recurring opportunity, resulting in 70% gross margins. And that's including labor. That's including your labor in most cases. So the whole idea here, of course, is to supply you with software services and support that make it so you don't need to invest a whole lot of labor in the ongoing feeding and care of your business continuity services, which allow you to keep those labor costs low, keep those recurring costs low, and generate really interesting recurring gross margins. However, one challenge that partners sometimes face is there are unforeseen costs. If you're working with a vendor that has a solution that is not reliable or doesn't have adequate provisioning, monitoring, reporting, and alerting capabilities, you end up spending a lot of labor costs. At other times, you may underestimate what the cloud storage costs are going to be, which will result in higher wholesale costs for your business on a monthly recurring basis, thereby trimming your margin opportunity down to, say, 40 or 45%. Now, the difference between 40 or 45% margins and 70% gross margins is the difference between, struggling or thriving. And what we want to make sure that all eFolder partners are out there doing is thriving day to day, managing that migration of infrastructure from on-premises to the cloud, and delivering services to your clients that allow you to generate really attractive revenue on a monthly basis that's extremely profitable. So really, today it's all about helping eFolder partners plan for success and help you to make sure that you first, number one, understand what your wholesale costs are going to be. plan accordingly, and then price accordingly. For those of you who are just hopping on the line, again, a reminder, if you have questions, please go ahead and just use the Q&A feature in the GoToWebinar application, and I will try to answer your questions on the fly or address them at the end of the formal presentation today. So really my promise to you in kind of reviewing what we're going to cover today is I'm going to give you a demo of the eFolder BDR Cost Wizard, and I'm going to show you how to use it, show you where you can get it on the eFolder Partner Portal, and show you how you can very effectively target and forecast what your wholesale costs are going to be on a client-by-client basis. And then I'm going to share with you real-life pricing examples from some of the most successful eFolder partners, and show you how you can achieve something on the order of 70% recurring gross margins in your business. I think it's helpful always to start out and give kind of an elevator view of the eFolder data protection service portfolio. eFolder supplies 3 different types of services that allow you to deliver data protection and business continuity services to your clients. And then the eFolder Continuity Cloud supports all 3 of those. So the first is the eFolder Aperture Cloud. This is a cloud replication service and cloud storage service that is specifically designed for partners that are using Aperture software to image and protect critical infrastructure at clients. It's the first and only public cloud replication service designed specifically for Aperture software. The service we're going to focus on today is eFolder ShadowProtect BDR. We've been shipping a BDR solution that utilizes ShadowProtect software for well over 2.5 years, and it's really going to be the focus of today's conversation. eFolder Backup is eFolder's longest selling and largest service offering, and it's a file and folder cloud backup service that's specifically designed for deployment by IT service providers, managed service providers, and VARs. The service is unique because it has features and capabilities that make it a very profitable and scalable solution for IT solution providers. It has a rich feature set that also enables local backup capabilities for fast recovery and all of the provisioning and management and reporting features that an MSP would desire in a backup solution. And then the eFolder Continuity Cloud is a cloud-based recovery environment that can be utilized with any of the other data protection services I just described. So eFolder ShadowProtect BDR basically incorporates StorageCraft ShadowProtect software along with an on-site appliance and then cloud services to provide further data protection. The ShadowProtect software gets deployed onto the production servers or workstations that you're protecting. The on-site BDR appliance is utilized as a storage server and as a standby server. If you need to, if you have a failed server, you can virtualize those server images on that appliance and then run them locally in the event of an outage of some kind at your client. And then eFolder then provides you the ability to back up those images on a nightly basis to the eFolder Storage Cloud, which provides many different disaster recovery options for our partners. You can either download the images from our cloud environment, you can have them shipped to you on physical media, or alternatively, those images can be virtualized in the eFolder Continuity Cloud on an emergency or as-needed basis when and if there's an outage at your client location or if you want to do testing, whatever the use case may be. But you have multiple different disaster recovery options. Now, I think it's also very important to just quickly review the pricing of how eFolder BDR is priced and what the main components are. So, one important upfront component is the cost of the BDR appliance. The BDR appliance that eFolder supplies to our partners range in price from about $1,750 up to almost $8,000. There's 5 different models to choose from. There's various RAM and storage configurations on each, and part of the BDR Cost Wizard helps you to plan which appliance is the right model to deploy to your clients. The second component is the fixed monthly component of the solution, and that's really paying for the ShadowProtect software. That's $20 per server or $5 per desktop. We do have an option for partners to source a perpetual software license instead if cash flow is not a problem and you'd prefer to pay for the software in that way. So that's your choice on how to pay for the ShadowProtect software. And then the service components are priced at $40 per BDR appliance, and then that $40 includes 150 gigabytes of cloud storage in the eFolder storage cloud, and then additional gigabytes are priced anywhere from 30 cents down to 20 cents a gig, depending on your total volume of storage with eFolder. So that's how the pricing works, and it's important to kind of go through that in detail so that you've got a good understanding of the different price components, because we're going to hop into a live demo of the BDR Cost Wizard here in a moment, which will, it'll be helpful to understand that before we get into the wizard. And then it bears noting just a quick overview of how continuity cloud pricing works. eFolder basically charges partners $150 per week to bring up a continuity cloud node on your behalf, and you only pay for it when you need it. So there's no minimums, so you don't need to have a minimum amount of storage with eFolder. You can have a single BDR appliance deployed to get access to the continuity cloud. There's no higher per gigabyte fees because you have access to the continuity cloud. Simply, if you have a client outage and you need to bring up their servers in a virtual computing environment in our cloud, or if you want to do periodic testing, you can do so. And we charge you $150 per week for the medium node and $450 per week for the large node. And the thing that will drive whether you want a medium or a large node is determined by how many servers you're going to be virtualizing in the cloud and running. So, but you only pay for it when you need it. And so if you did it for 3 weeks, that would be $450 for the medium node. And that's wholesale to your organization. You can virtualize 1 client or 5 clients or 10 clients, depending. So that fee is the fixed wholesale cost to your organization, not on a per client basis. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, so before we hop into the wizard, I think it's important to kind of characterize why the Cost Wizard is such an important thing when you're doing business with eFolder. Many of our partners have done BDR services with other vendors before coming to eFolder. I'm not going to mention the name of the vendor, but there is a legacy solution on the market that many of you may be familiar with that leverages ShadowProtect software. And one of the things that vendor decided to do was to try to reduce the amount of cloud storage utilization by rolling up the consolidated dailies and monthlies that you would be backing up to the cloud into the base image on a nightly basis. The desire to do that is to reduce the overall cloud storage utilization, but the challenge of doing that is that vendor, to actually accomplish that task, needed to have access to the encryption key from all of their partners in order to do that roll-up exercise in the cloud. I think if everybody's aware, you're paying attention to the news, there are many, many risks to allowing a solution provider to have your encryption keys to your client data available. I mean, the risks are that an internal rogue employee could somehow compromise the data, but there's many, or their database of keys could be compromised in some way. So there's a reason they did it, which is to try to cut down on cloud storage utilization, but there's a huge risk to the data security and privacy of your client data in that sort of scenario. Now, eFolder, when we introduced our BDR, has taken a different approach. When we, on a nightly basis, what eFolder will do, the eFolder software running on the BDR appliance will take the consolidated daily, and upload it to the eFolder storage cloud. If it's the end of the month or month of the first day of the new month, we will also take the consolidated monthly and store it in the cloud. So what you will end up with in the eFolder storage cloud is the base image, which in most cases is pre-seeded into our data center, and then you'll end up with the consolidated dailies and monthlies. And as the months go by, those consolidated monthlies will stack up. Now, the benefit of this approach, of course, is that in the cloud you have more granular monthly recovery points, which many clients may require. On the local appliance, you have many more recovery points. You know, the recovery points from throughout the day, the consolidated weeklies are on the appliance. So you have fine granular control of doing a recovery on the BDR appliance itself. But in the cloud, you end up with the consolidated dailies, monthlies, and the base image. Now, eFolder never touches your encrypted data in the cloud. We never have access to your encryption key to do any sort of tasks on that data. So this is a much more secure approach. It's a much more granular approach. But the result is that there will be larger cloud utilization over time. And so what we want to do is to make sure on a client-by-client basis that you fully understand how your wholesale cloud costs and your client utilization is going to add up. Before I launch into the wizard, however, let me just see if there's any questions that I can try to tackle right off the bat. So somebody wants to know the pricing I reviewed earlier. Is that reseller pricing or client pricing? That is the wholesale pricing. So if I go back a couple slides here, this is the wholesale price. The wholesale price to eFolder partners. eFolder does not publish MSRP pricing at all. We execute in a one-tier distribution model where we deliver software, hardware, and services directly to our partners. And we don't publish a list price, which gives you the ultimate flexibility in terms of how you price and package your offerings to your clients. Now, because you have ultimate flexibility, you have to be a lot smarter in how you do it, and you need to make sure you fully understand your wholesale costs. So that's the trade-off. You could work with another vendor on the BDR. There's another vendor I'm thinking of in the BDR space, and they have a very traditional kind of reseller type model where, you know, they publish an MSRP, and, you know, there's a standard rate card, but your margins are limited to like 30 or 35% in a best case scenario because of that. eFolder's approach is different. We have wholesale cost to you, and then you have ultimate flexibility in how you take those options to market. Let me look at the log here. Jeff wants to know, is there an option to source or provide our own hardware and still utilize the BDR software? Yes. So with the eFolder BDR for ShadowProtect, you can deploy your own brand of appliance, and we provide a application note on how you load the right software assets on a Windows storage server, and you can use any brand of server you want and build your own BDR. You also have the option of, in some cases, some clients don't need on-site recovery, or they don't value or they can't afford on-site recovery, so you can do a deployment scenario where you simply attach storage to their one server in most cases. We're usually talking very small clients here, and you can deploy a solution that gives them the benefits of server imaging and the benefits of cloud backup and protection, but maybe they don't need fast recovery on site, so you skip the BDR appliance altogether. In both the build your own BDR and in the latter scenario, the monthly recurring cost for ShadowProtect is slightly higher. It's $25 per server per month. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, so Todd wants to know, can you give an example of numbers of servers as a reference point? Yeah, so when I go through the scenarios with the Cost Wizard, I'll do a couple different scenarios with a small client and a medium-sized client. Okay, let me just answer one or two more questions before hopping into the demo. So Mark wants to know, so a question about, I think, the Continuity Cloud. For testing, can we use a medium cloud for server test and a large for test for? I mean, I think the question is, can you do a medium node for testing, and then if they have a client outage, where you need to do a large node, can you provision one of those? Yes, but I mean, we provision the medium or large nodes for a 1 week chunk, so you can't switch from one to the other midweek. But it's perfectly valid to, say, do a quarterly test cycle with all of your clients and use a medium node for a week-long period. And then if you had an outage where you needed to, say, virtualize 10 or 20 client servers, you could do that in the large continuity cloud node later. So Robin wants to know, is there a 2-week minimum for the continuity cloud nodes? And the answer to that is no. When we initially launched the service, we did have minimums. We no longer have minimums. It's just simply $150 a week, and you buy it by the week. Okay, so Brian wants to know, how can we control offsite or cloud storage costs? How can we reduce it and control it? And that's what we're going to do in the next couple of minutes, and look at the Cost Wizard. So let me fast forward here to the Wizard page, and then I'm going to put away the Q&A log here and switch to the Wizard. Okay, so what you also should be seeing on your screen is an Excel spreadsheet. This wizard is available to all eFolder partners on the Partner Center. So you would simply log into the eFolder, your eFolder account, and go to Partner Center, and simply do a keyword search on a wizard, and you'll come up with this. So what I'm going to do in the next couple of minutes is just go through 2 different scenarios, and just show you how you can forecast for your clients your wholesale storage costs, your anticipated wholesale storage costs over a realistic customer lifetime. Okay, so first thing I'm going to start out with is a 2-server environment. So I'm going to put in 2 servers there, no desktops. In terms of the number, every eFolder BDR comes with 50 user licenses for Exchange Granular Recovery. And I'm going to put in 15 here. So that's really not going to affect the model because it's less than the 50 included licenses. I'm going to say in this client scenario that they have 40 gigabytes of Exchange data and 10 gigabytes of SQL data and 100 gigabytes of file data on their file server. So, they've got 150 gigs of raw data that needs to be stored. Now, the first thing you notice is that the wizard will calculate down here in rows 20 and 21. Let me just go down a little bit. But the first thing you'll notice is that in rows 20 and 21, what you see is that the compressed base image of that 150 gigs will be about 90 gigabytes. Okay, so that's what you're going to probably, in most cases, pre-seed into the eFolder data center. We process your seeds into the data center in 48 business hours with a 1 p.m. Eastern cutoff time. You send us them on physical media, and we will ship them back. We will ship your drives back to you after we're done with the seeding process. Now, what you see is that in this sort of scenario, oh, I forgot one thing, a very important thing, rather. One thing you need to do is you need to factor in data growth, okay? And what I recommend is that you either make some determinations on what your clients have seen on average and use that in the tool, or depending on your pricing approach, every time you do a quotation for your client, you determine what their data growth has looked like in the past 6 to 12 months in their environment. And if you have had a RMM tool deployed into their environment, you can determine their overall data growth, historical trends. But I'm going to put in 1% monthly data growth, and that, of course, compounds, right? And so what you see is that you start out with 150 gigs of client data. Their data is growing at 1% a month. The initial base image is 90 gigs. And then the monthly, consolidated monthly is going to be about 7 gigs per month. And then after 3 years, the total cloud utilization will have grown to about 335 gigs. Okay, now the first thing, the next thing we want to look at in the wizard is we want to look at which BDR model to deploy. So, something with 2 terabytes of 2 terabytes of storage is more than enough, and 16 gigs of RAM for 2 servers, that will be more than enough to virtualize both of those servers in the event of an outage of some kind. So we leave it at the 2240 model here. Okay, and then we go down, and what we see down here below is what eFolder recommends is what your average storage utilization is going to be in our cloud environment over that 36-month period, and it's 252 gigabytes. Okay, now in fact we're not picking like the smack dab middle, but we are actually using what the storage utilization will be in month 26, just to be extra conservative. So what you do is you overwrite what's already in the model here to 252 gigabytes, and then you go down and look at what your resulting costs are going to be. First of all, the BDR appliance is $22.49. Okay, that's the upfront BDR hardware cost. And then down below you have the $40 a month, which I mentioned earlier in reviewing the pricing, which includes 150 gigabytes. You have 2 ShadowProtect software licenses per month, so that's 40 plus 40. And then what you see is your average budgeted cloud utilization or offsite storage costs will be $30.60 wholesale a month. So your total wholesale monthly cost over that 36-month period will be on average $110.60. So the important thing is that then when you build either your customized quotation for that client, or you build a standardized rate card for the 6 different typical deployment scenarios for your clients, you need to make sure that you understand what your wholesale costs are going to be. This is a relatively small client. Let's look at a different example and just overwrite this data with something larger. But before I do that, let me first see if there's questions. Todd wants to know, how do you factor in how much memory you need for virtualizing a server on a BDR appliance? So, basically it's, how much RAM do you have in the actual production server environment will drive how much RAM you would need to have similar performance characteristics in a BDR appliance. So that's going to be the easiest rule of thumb. And that's also the same rule of thumb when you plan to use either a medium or a large continuity cloud node. So hopefully that answers that question. So Robin wants to know about bandwidth. How do you determine the required upload bandwidth capacity? And that's covered here in rows 28 through 30. And there's a couple different things to note here. We give some perspective on one of the unique advantages of the eFolder BDR approach is that you can do site-to-site replication from these BDR appliances. So if you could have a client that has multiple locations, and you would put a BDR at each location if they had, say, 2 data center environments, and you could cross-replicate to those environments and not use the eFolder cloud. So there you would get the benefits of geographical diversity. On the other hand, you could take a very large BDR appliance from eFolder and put it in your own colo or data center and have your clients replicate from their appliances at their location to your location, and again, not necessarily use the eFolder cloud. So those are, or you could do both. And one thing we note here is that the amount of bandwidth utilization when you're doing cross-site replication is always going to be less than when you do the backup to the eFolder cloud, because when you're doing replication, appliance to appliance replication, you will not be sending the consolidated dailies and monthlies across the WAN, because the image manager is running at the target replication site, which will be doing that consolidation. So you're only going to be sending the consolidated dailies, but not the consolidated monthlies. So your overall bandwidth utilization is less. But what you see here is you notice that the bandwidth utilization is detailed based upon the client environment. Okay, so let's go back up to the top and now go with a more of a medium-sized client from what we typically see. So in this scenario, we're going to look at a 6-server environment, and in this client has 100 users, and so on their Exchange server, so we're going to put in 100 mailboxes. So there will be an additional fee for the additional mailboxes for Exchange granular recovery. Much larger environment, so 200 gigabytes of Exchange data, 40 gigabytes of SQL data, and 500 gigs of file data. Okay, we're going to leave the data growth at 1%, but what you see here is the compressed base image will be about 419 gigs. You'll see that the monthly delta will be 33 gigs, and over 3 years you'll get to 1.6, 1,600 gigabytes or so over 3 years. In this sort of scenario, this deployment would likely require our largest appliance, the 3880, and which has 48 gigs of RAM in the base configuration and 6 terabytes of storage. You see that there's quite a bit more bandwidth utilization. So to Robin's question earlier, you need to keep an eye on that. And then down below, just like we did before, we need to take the average recommended offsite budget, offsite storage utilization budget, and overwrite that so that we end up with our price points. You see that the BDR appliance itself is $7,899, plus there's a one-time perpetual license for the additional Exchange granular recovery licenses, so roughly $8,000 up front. And then let's look at how the pricing is broken down for on the monthly basis. So what you see is you have your $40 per location, which includes 150 gigabytes. You have 6 servers at $20 per server per month for 120, and then your average budgeted off-site storage costs over that 36-month period will be $318. You add that up, so on average, the wholesale cost for this client will be $478 per month, on average. In the initial months, it'll be less. In the months past 26 months, it'll be slightly more, but on average, it'll be $478. Okay, so what we've done here is we've this tool allows you to plan a rate card if you want, based upon your typical client deployment scenarios, or client by client, as you've gone in and done an assessment of a client environment, and you're coming back and making a managed services quotation for your client, you can make sure you've got a very good forecast on your wholesale costs, and therefore the desired pricing you want to supply to your clients and the margins you want to make on a recurring basis. Okay, so so Mike wants to know, what do you suggest the MSP sells this for? Okay, that's the next step of the webinar today, and I'll be changing gears to talk about that really quickly. So Robin wants to know about non-compressible data. There are various varieties of non-compressible data, things like files, photos rather, and PDF images and that sort of thing. And the reality is that if you have a lot of uncompressible data, then your storage utilization is going to be higher. But we allow you to go in and key in the amount of uncompressible or non-compressible data. And you see that if you just key that in, add that, it's going to increase the overall utilization. So Julius wants to know, is the offsite backup storage optional if the client doesn't want it? And the answer is yes. I mean, you have the ability to do replication, site-to-site replication, or replication to your own environment. But or the client may say, I just can't afford the offsite piece, and you may not be replicating anywhere. But if a fire, flood, tornado, hurricane wipes out that location, then you're going to have a situation where you've imaged the servers, you've backed them up locally, but now you've got a scenario where the location's been destroyed, the BDR appliance is destroyed. If you haven't replicated that data, or if you haven't backed it up to the eFolder cloud, then the client and you are in big trouble. The misnomer is that the cloud is cheap. The cloud is not cheap, but the cloud allows small and medium businesses to get the kind of business continuity and backup and data protection that only larger businesses could previously afford. So I wouldn't recommend that. You need to replicate the data for geographical diversity or back it up to the eFolder cloud. But the great news with the eFolder solution is you have ultimate flexibility in what you choose to do. So at this point, I think what makes sense is I want to show you, first of all, where you can go and get the wizard. So I'm here, right here at the eFolder Partner Center. All you got to do is go here and type in. Our Partner Center is full keyword searchable in terms of resources. So I'm just going to type in wizard here. Make sure you guys can see what I'm seeing here. Type in wizard, and there it pops up right there. There's the Excel spreadsheet. You just click there, and it will launch. It'll launch right away for you. Okay, so what I want to do now is to kind of change gears. So now we've looked at how to forecast your wholesale costs, which is the foundational element of doing pricing. You can't come up with pricing unless you understand what the market will bear, what features you want to include, and what your wholesale costs are going to be. We can't forecast your labor costs. You need to do that part, but with a little bit of experience, if you've got hands-on experience with an eFolder BDR and you've at least done a trial, or you at least have one or two deployed, then you understand what you can do a relatively good forecast of what your feeding and care for that client relationship is going to be and what your costs are going to be. And so now what I want to do is change gears and talk about, well, how do I charge for these solutions? And what I'm going to do in the next couple minutes is share with you the perspectives of 3 different partners and how they price and package their service offering. Each one of these approaches is unique and different, and they each have pluses and minuses. And I think each one of these business owners would be very candid about the negatives. So, and the positives, right? And each of them mesh to their business strategy as a company. So the first approach I'm going to talk about is Dave Watts from NetFusion. And in his view, the biggest challenge in selling managed services today is the trap of selling point solutions. And so what Dave tries to do is he says we go for client relationships where we own and deliver a complete managed services bundle, where business continuity is just a piece of the overall solution. So what Dave does not like to present to his clients is he doesn't like to present a long, complicated quotation that has a bunch of price points for a la carte options. He wants to get the entirety of the managed services business opportunity from the client, everything from managed server and managed desktop, the managed security, the antivirus, spyware, firewall running on all the machines. He wants to support special line of business apps. He wants to support all of the LAN and WAN infrastructure of the client and the firewall. And business continuity and protection for servers and workstations is a included component for every single one of his clients. So what he does is he goes in, assesses what the client needs, determines what needs to be ripped and replaced, determines what they're going to manage, and it comes back to the client and says, hey, I'm going to do all of your managed service offerings with these service levels for this price per month. And business continuity is a piece of that. Now, behind the scenes, of course, what Dave and his organization is doing is they are making darn sure that they understand what their wholesale costs are going to be for all of the included components that they're putting into the quotation. But what the client sees is a total solution, not line items, not nickels and dimes. They can build everything in that they know the client needs, and his organization gets the benefits of standardization and expertise while delivering a high level of service to the client. Okay, now, so the benefit of this is that you get nice, big, recurring revenue from clients. Clients are not easily able to opt out to any of the service components. But the challenge with this business model is you need to have 100% client ownership in most cases. It's really hard to go in and get a toehold in an account. You need to win the entirety of the business, which is challenging. The larger and larger clients you run into, the more likely they may have incumbent IT resources, or they may have a very diverse client environment that they can't change. And so it becomes more complicated as you get into larger accounts, which kind of sets the stage for the second model I want to share with you. You know, in this case, this is Leif Wildenberg, president of MyTech Partners, and the way he takes his BDR solution to market is he says, we are very focused on new client acquisition, and we see BDR as a wedge service that can get us into new accounts that we can grow into larger relationships. Our BDR service needs to be rock solid as a standalone offering we can offer to any SMB. So Leif has a very large sales team and a very aggressive sales team, and he's looking at BDR as a way to go in and wedge it into a client and get a toehold and maybe only satisfy their backup and disaster recovery and business continuity needs, and then over time win larger pieces of that client's overall IT spend over time. Therefore, what he needs to have is he needs to have a more of a rate card type approach to BDR pricing. And what you see in front of you is what Leif charges, you know, which is his standard rate card. Now, if there's customized needs for a client, they will adapt this. But his salespeople can go out and sit down in front of a client and confidently say, if you've got 3 servers with about 500 gigs of data, I can, you know, that's going to cost you $600 per month on a recurring basis. Now, the other thing that Leif's organization does to make things simple is they only charge a $750 upfront fee, so the cost of that BDR appliance is included and amortized in that monthly retail price. But what he's aiming for is 50 to 70% recurring gross margin from these clients on a monthly basis. His margins at the lower end, clients that have 1, 2, and 3 servers, are higher. His margins at the higher end are lower on a percentage basis, but of course, as you move up the food chain, you're getting a lot more gross cash flow from each client. So that's his model, and the benefit of this approach is that we try to think like a vendor in terms of simplicity and packaging of our offering. Simplicity allows us to sell more easily and penetrate new accounts. Now, that being said, to have a rate card type approach like this, you need to go in and forecast what your wholesale costs are going to be, and that's why we spent so much time on the tool, is that if this is the approach that makes sense for your organization, before you come up with this rate card, you need to figure out what your typical client deployment scenarios are like, plug them into the Cost Wizard to figure out what your wholesale costs are be, understand what your labor costs are going to be, and then you know, also figure out what you're going to do about, you know, charging for the appliance up front or not. So at this point, let me, before I hop into the third model, let me just go back into the Q&A log and see if I can tackle any questions really quickly. Let me just see. Okay, I don't see any major questions that need to be answered right at this moment, so let me go into the third model. And the third model was inspired by Eric Thorsell, president of SCC, and his big critique, I think, of what a lot of managed service providers are doing today is he sees people over-bundling. I call what Eric does is a balanced bundle. But what he sees a lot of MSPs doing is making far too many features and commitments inside of a service offering for too low of a price. So in his view, they're leaving money on the table, they overcommit in their pricing bundles and get creamed on their labor costs down the road. So just a couple highlights about Eric's business. They're based in the Minneapolis-St. Paul market. They've been an eFolder partner since 2006. They've got 71 BDRs or thereabouts in production, protecting 327 servers with 4,500 end users, or actual users inside of those client organizations. Over 90% of his clients get a BDR deployed into their environments, and what he's able to do is generate almost 76% recurring gross margin in his BDR service, and it's the most profitable offering. Now, how does he do that? He takes a couple different approaches. First of all, he assesses what the client needs are. He unbundles the offering, meaning he doesn't include all the features in the base price. And things like the actual recoveries he may need to do for clients in the future, testing he may need to do for clients in the future, those become a la carte offerings on top. But what he does is he takes the kind of core functionality and makes that the base bundle with a la carte options on top, and he aims for a minimum of 66% gross margins on the base. Okay, and the way he does that is he basically takes his wholesale costs and triples them. And let me show you how he does that. So in terms of determining how to price for the client, every client gets their own assessment, and it's part of his sales process. So he's in there asking them about their environment, determining how large it is, determining what their toleration for downtime is, which then helps him turn around and effectively position a price point back to the client when he understands what their cost and tolerance for downtime is. He maintains ownership of the equipment, but he has the client pay for it up front through an installation fee. And then he has a lot of flexibility in terms of how he prices and packages. So just to give you a quick example, so in this particular scenario, he used the Cost Wizard to determine that his cost would be, on average, $153 a month. What he turns around and does is his retail charge to his clients is $450 a month, triple his eFolder wholesale costs, and then he charges up front for the BDR appliance, and he positions it as a standby server to the client. And he positions this as an install fee. So he retains title, but he gets that shot of cash flow at the upfront, which covers his labor and the appliance, some of his labor and the appliance, but then he retains ownership. And if the client ever disconnects or churns or leaves, then he's able to go in and pull that asset out and redeploy it to a different client. So he starts with the end margin in mind. He prices it based upon the value the client is seeking. If the client has low tolerance for downtime, then you can, or that you can easily quantify what the cost of downtime is to the client, having them turn around and pay $450 a month in most cases is not that difficult for him to achieve. And he, his goal, his really advice to people is avoid all you can eat, because all of those additional services you can deploy on top of this base offering, you can charge extra for those. And that's how he gets to a 76% recurring gross margin. And his final comment is, BDR is our most profitable managed service offering, and eFolder is our key partner helping us deliver a reliable and predictably profitable service offering. So just to conclude before we go into final Q&A, eFolder, our mission as an organization is to help partners like yourself adapt to the migration of IT infrastructure from on-premises into the cloud. Everything we do in terms of how we price and package our service offerings allows you to differentiate yourself in the market. You can put your own pricing on it, your own branding. You can come up with, as I've shown in these three previous scenarios, your own service offerings, your own spin on how you price and package these to your clients. And you're never going to have your clients come back and saying, hey, I can go get, vendor X's solution from, this other partner for 3 points less than what you're offering it to me for, because you're able to come up with your own unique service offering based upon eFolder's software solutions and total bundles we supply you. And by doing so, you're able to thrive as an organization and generate really attractive monthly gross margin and cash flow into your business. Before I go into the final Q&A here, and we wrap up at the top of the hour, we've got about 11 minutes for questions and answers. If you are interested in a free trial of eFolder BDR, simply send me an email in the next hour, in the next couple minutes. Do it now. There's my email address. If you're an existing eFolder partner and you're not yet deploying our BDR, do a trial. We'll ship you a unit, and at no cost. Your only commitment to us is that you'll ship it back if you're not satisfied or if you're not interested. If you're not yet an eFolder partner, again, this is a great way to evaluate if you want to become an eFolder partner. So simply send me an email. My email address is right there on the screen in front of you, and I will make sure that we hook you up with a free trial. So I'm going to go back into the Q&A log. So if you do have any questions, now's a good time to get them on the table. Jeremy wants to know, can we get a copy of the slides? And yes, we will be sending a link to a SlideShare version of the slides, where you'll also be able to download the PowerPoint version if you are interested. Okay, Bobby asks, since you are pricing based upon the estimated 26-month usage, what do you see actual usage? What if you see actual usage substantially higher than what you estimated? Are you essentially gambling by basing pricing on what you think usage is going to be in 2 years? And the answer is yes, Bobby. This is a gamble, but it's a calculated gamble, and we've given you a tool to forecast these things. So what I think the wild card here is that you understand what the historical data growth has been on a client-by-client basis, and that you, if we toggle back over to the model real quick, it's important in the wizard, this number here, row 16, that you correctly forecast what data growth is going to look like in your client, and you have some historical understanding of what it looks like in their environment, and that you have contractual language in your pricing and packaging so that if your clients grow, your data grows at a rate that's faster than anticipated, that the client, you're able to monetize that, frankly. Now, again, this is a balancing act. A lot of clients, what a lot of partners have told us is they do not, partners or their clients do not like to see variability in how these services are priced on a monthly basis. So, you know, what you want to do is get the client to commit to a higher price in the initial stages, and then over time, their retail pricing is flat. Your margins are marginally going down over time, but you're making much better margins at the upfront, lower margins at the end, and then you always have the solution of reseeding the base image, in the eFolder cloud, so that you trim the amount of consolidated monthlies that are contributing to data growth. So now, but that is always a labor-intensive proposition, but that's one solution. So the other solution, or the other comment I would make, is that if you come up with a rate card type approach, if we go back to Leif Wildenberg's MyTech Partners rate card, if you have this sort of rate card type approach, what you're able to do for clients is as their data migrates, as their overall data utilization migrates from one tier to the next, you simply increase their pricing. And what you get them to do when you sign them up is to commit to, okay, if your data goes over a certain threshold, then you're going to hop into a higher price point. And that's how you control your revenue opportunity and your profit opportunity over time. Okay. Let's see here. So I'm back in the Q&A log. Let me just fast forward here to the free trial offer, just as a reminder to any of you who may be interested. So Robin wants to know, can we reseed a new image and at the same time leave the upload processing for the old underway until the new image and its uploaded dailies have been established complete at the data center? I mean, normally what's going to happen with eFolder BDR is that the seeding process will take place in between one of the backup intervals. And so you will just end up with a new base image, and then the consolidated dailies will then arrive, and consolidated monthlies and so on. Chris wants to know, did you already mention any BDR upgrade or trade-in options when a client's needs become greater? So from a hardware perspective, Chris, we don't have a trade-in or trade-up program today. We're entertaining something like that. But one of the really nice things about eFolder BDR appliances is they are field upgradable. So you can add storage and RAM down the road in the field for clients down the road. So that's kind of that's a really a lot of BDR appliances that are out there in the market today are not field upgradable, and that's a big problem for a lot of folks. But so that's kind of plan number one, as if your clients outstrip outstrip their utilization. So let's see here. Let me continue to scan the Q&A log here. I don't have an MC to help me with the Q&A log, so just bear with me. Mark wants to know, is Small Business Server 2001 is not listed on the or 2011, I'm sorry, is not listed on the Wizard. Is that because it's not supported or an oversight? It's just not included. It is supported, but it's not included on the Wizard. Let's see here. Jacobo wants to know, how do cloud services such as Office 365 and Azure and Google impact the sales of BDR? What I would say there is have a look at efolder.net/blog, and our CEO Kevin Hoffman recently wrote a 3-part blog series on the future of cloud backup, in a cloud world. So, as production servers migrate from on-premises to the cloud, the question becomes, will we still need data protection for infrastructure running in the cloud, production infrastructure running in the cloud? And it's a fairly complicated topic, actually, believe it or not, and I would recommend that you go to that blog and give it, set aside 20 minutes and read it, all 3 parts, because it's fairly informative, and there's a lot of surprising information there that you may not be aware of. So, Carlisle wants to know, what is the best practice for how frequently reseeding should be done? The choice is yours, but what we're seeing is that partners are deciding to reseed the base image anywhere from 18 to 36 months out. Again, it's all around, how much labor do you want to invest, and when do you want to do so? But that's what we're seeing, is anywhere between 18 to 36 months reseeding, is an option. Now, a couple other comments I do want to make. Let me this problem of consolidated monthly stacking up, there are other solutions. If you are interested in looking at the eFolder Aperture Cloud solution, there is a capability in the Aperture software which allows you to control the cloud retention or the retention policy in general for a client in a fine-grained way, and the software itself will do a roll-up of those consolidated monthlies on the encrypted data in the cloud. So there's no data security risk. If your client needs 2 months of monthly recovery points in the cloud, or 6, you can go in and configure that. And so eFolder is the only company in the channel today that supports a cloud environment for StorageCraft, ShadowProtect, and Dell Aperture from a single cloud vendor. So that's another option that you're welcome to explore. Let's see here. David wants to know, seeding of Australian clients, is it local to Australia or to the U.S.? David, talk to your eFolder account manager about our new FTP option. So Ken wants to know why Aperture versus ShadowProtect BDR, why one or the other. Basically we see application for both solutions. We have some partners that are utilizing both. Generally speaking, ShadowProtect is more affordable than Aperture because the actual software itself is more affordable. A lot of the feature set for ShadowProtect is perfect for small businesses. As you get into larger clients, larger data sets, we see that Aperture has more utility because they're, number one, the chain-free retention policy feature I mentioned a couple minutes ago is relevant, and the compression and deduplication is more effective for larger data sets with Aperture. So those are a couple things. We've got a couple different webinars that we've done previously on specifically that topic, so I would direct you to the YouTube channel to spend additional time on those topics, comparing and contrasting those two solutions. I want to be sensitive to people's time. We're right now at the top of the hour, and we still have some additional questions. I'm sorry we couldn't handle all of them, but hopefully today's content exploration of the eFolder BDR Cost Wizard is going to be helpful to you to better understand your wholesale costs and your pricing and packaging and your ability to thrive. So thank you very much. This is Ted Hulsy signing off. Thanks for joining another eFolder Partner webinar. Take care now.